All right, good evening, everybody. My name is Terry Quinn. For those of you who don't know me or haven't met me yet, I'm the college and career counselor here at the high school, and I am also this year the 12th grade counselor, so I have the 12th graders and I have the college and career piece. So mostly this year so far, I've been working with the seniors. Marcy Drum, anyone in here parent of a junior? Okay, Marcy Drum's your gal, and she's the junior counselor, and she will be starting to work with your students as they pick their classes for next year, and she's going to start the whole college process for them and start talking to them about, what they want to do, where they see themselves in their post-high school plans, and then I'll pick up with them next year when they are seniors. So this is just a little information from the Occupational Outlook, Bureau of Labor and Statistics, the growing careers, quite a variety of different types of degrees, bachelor degrees, certificate, associate's degree, which I was kind of surprised about, so I just like to put that up there for informational purposes. So tonight we're going to be talking about the college planning process. Please feel free to ask questions throughout. Everyone can hear me. I'm pretty loud. I'm not mic'd. I'm usually pretty loud enough. So we're going to talk about the whole planning process and how to start kind of planning for life after high school. Anybody in here a parent of a sophomore and freshman? Okay. Do you have older children too? You're only a freshman? No, you're a junior. You're a junior and a freshman. Okay, good. So there's close to 4,000 colleges and universities in the United States, and our students tend to have a tendency to kind of stay in a 3-hour bubble from Blairstown, New Jersey, but we do have some that venture out of state and far away. So, but for the most part, there's different types of schools. There's the Ivy League schools. There's the schools beneath that I like to refer to as little Ivies. So your Ivy Leagues are, Yale, Princeton, Harvard, those schools. The little Ivies are the ones that are kind of just a step below there. Tufts University, Boston College, schools like that. State universities, Penn State, Rutgers, liberal arts colleges like Middlebury up in Vermont, Hampshire College, Williams College, things like that. They kind of focus on a whole total liberal arts education. Specialized institutions, conservatories, art schools, community colleges, 2-year private colleges, and then military academies, and then we have technical schools, and those are all the different types of options that students have after they graduate. Excuse me. Things as far as what things you should look at when you are starting to think about what type of school you want to go to. You need to think about the size of the school. We are a very small high school, so lots of times students want the exact opposite of that. They want Rutgers, they want Penn State, they want a town, or some students like to stay small and kind of intimate. It all depends on the student. So there's different things that are going to help them decide what school is right for them. Another thing is distance from home, difficulty of entrance, the majors that are available, whether they have athletics or not, certain sports. Is it a public or private? The tuition obviously is going to be a factor. Entrance requirements, co-ed or single sex, that's sometimes a factor as well. Narrowing the focus. So one thing I always tell parents and students is the best way to make your decisions or to figure out what it is that you want is to go visit the schools. And do your research. Now we have the internet. You don't have to look in the, when we went to college, we had to look in those big, thick books that you could use as a doorstop. Now everything's on the internet. So, you want to look at what you're bringing, what your student is bringing to the table, as well as what that college is looking for. So what I mean by that is you want to know what the average GPA is and SAT scores of the colleges you're interested in, and do you match that? Are you close to what that school is looking for? What percentage of students graduate in 4 years? Does anybody know the average time it takes for a student to graduate with a bachelor's degree? Does anybody know what the average years is? I heard it. 6 years. I'm still surprised by that, but I know there's data that backs it out. I'm still a little surprised by that, but that is what the statistics are telling us. You want to look at the student-to-professor ratio. Obviously, if you go to a school like Rutgers, you're going to be in mass lecture halls. You're going to be, in a classroom with lots of students, especially the first few years that you're there, or do you want to really get to know your professors on a personal level and have access to them? Housing is important. Most freshmen live on campus. You want to make sure that housing is guaranteed for freshmen. You want to ask questions about safety, study abroad, different types of opportunities like that. Did you have a question? Oh, okay. How do you get this information? So we have this wonderful program through the high school. It's called Naviance. It's a web-based program that all students have accounts for. They access it in school. We have grade level lessons that we do with each class. The freshmen haven't been on yet, so they don't have an account. We are hoping to add the middle school to that pool and start getting them on Naviance. I know I said that last year and it didn't happen, but hopefully this year we're going to get the middle schoolers on there as well to start researching careers. So Naviance is a good place to go where you can kind of start looking at schools that either fit what your GPA and PSAT scores are, or what majors you want to explore and what schools have those majors. We did have a college fair in the beginning of the school year. We had two actually on 2 different days. Every junior was given a pass to go and every senior was given a pass to go. Next year, the sophomore class will be able to go to those college fairs as well. There's also some regional college fairs. They have a tendency to be a little bit far away, Parsippany area, but I do send that information out when we do get it. Social media is really big for colleges. All colleges have Twitter, Facebook. I don't even know all the other social media pages. You guys could probably tell me, but so there's a lot of information on there too. There's websites that you can go to find out what the day in the life of a student at certain schools are. And the biggest thing was going to be going out and visiting schools, getting a feel if you want to go to an urban campus in the middle of a city, or do you want to go someplace that's a little bit more rural, like this area, or do you want to be in a more suburban area, like maybe, I don't know, Centenary is slightly suburban. So that's how you're going to kind of research and find all that information out. Like I say, campus tours are very important. On any school's website, you can go to the admission part of a school website and you can find out when their open houses are. A lot of the open houses in the fall are geared towards seniors, but that doesn't mean juniors or sophomores can't attend those. In the springtime, open houses are more geared towards juniors as they start their post-high school planning process. I know our new attendance policy says that there's no such thing as almost no such thing as an excused absence anymore, but we still do encourage students to take college visits. I think it's important for students to go when school is in session so they can kind of get a vibe of what the campus is like and student population and things like that. You can't always go during the school year, especially if you want to travel to California or Florida to go visit a college campus. So if you have to go in the summer, that's fine. Always make sure you stop in at the admissions office. If you're not doing a specific open house day, make sure that you record that you were there. There's tours that happen every day of the week, on Saturdays, and over the summer. You can always schedule a tour. Usually you just have to call about a week or 2 in advance to schedule a tour for a campus. And then you can do overnights too. Sometimes students wait to do this when they're trying to make that final decision of which college they're actually going to say, yes, I'm going there in their senior year. But you can do overnights in the summertime or during the school year. A lot of times athletes do overnights and spend weekends with the team and kind of get a feeling of what being part of that team is like. How colleges evaluate your students. The first thing that they're going to definitely look at is the transcript. So on the transcript is every course they've taken at North Warren. They're going to look at the difficulty level of the class and the grade that they received in that class. So, schools like to see students challenging themselves. That doesn't mean that every student should take an AP class their senior year, but they want to see challenge throughout the year. So maybe if you started off in a level 1 class your freshman year, and then you did really well in that class, and they see that your sophomore year you challenged yourself and upped it to a level 2, a college preparatory class. So they want to see not only just honors and AP classes, although they really like those, they want to see that growth and challenge and improvement as years go on. Sometimes freshmen have organizational issues. Maybe they don't take homework that seriously. They kind of aren't ready for all this responsibility of being in high school, and sometimes freshman year grades aren't so great. That doesn't mean that their four-year high school or their four-year college plans can go out the window. They just need to improve, and colleges really like to see, a student who had a rough start, but then they showed improvement over the years. So along with the transcript, they want to see their grade point average, their rank in class, which is how they rank among the class that they're graduating with. We use the weighted GPA for that. Depending on the level of class you take, a level 0 or a level 1 class carries no extra weight at all. A level 2 class, which is college preparatory, weights your final grade 5 points. An honors class weights your final grade 7.5 points, and an AP class weights your grade 10 points. So it's possible if you got 100 in AP class, though I don't know many students who have, but I know there's some, you could have 110 GPA for that class. The next thing they're going to look at are test scores. The SAT, which has 3 different parts, are offered throughout the school year. Juniors, hopefully you took the PSAT in October, sophomores too. I know there were some freshmen that took the PSAT as well, but you should take the actual SAT in January or March. Those are the first 2 dates of your second semester. You'll have your PSAT results by then. You'll have a good understanding of where you're testing at, and then you should take the actual SAT in January or March. You have the options to take it January, March, May, and June, your junior year. And you do want to take it 1 or 2 times your junior year, and then if you want to spend the summer really doing some heavy-duty test prep, try to get those scores up one last time in the fall of your senior year. That's a good idea. But you don't really need to take the test 10 times. That's really kind of over-testing. Statistics show that once you take the test more than 3 times, your scores really kind of plateau, unless you're doing some really major test prep that you haven't done before. The other test that is required, or not required, that schools will accept for admittance is also called the ACT. So there are 2 different types of tests, equally received by all colleges and universities across the country. There's not one test that's better than the other, but they are very different tests. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but I definitely recommend juniors take each test at least once, and then we see which one you do better on, and then super prepare for that one test, because sometimes you do equally well in both. Sometimes I have seen students who have done remarkably well on the ACT and have totally bombed the SAT, and it's just a matter of which test is friendlier for you. Yes? Oh, yes, they do. I have not found one yet that won't accept it. 20 years ago, that wasn't true, but in the past 10 years, the ACT used to be for the middle states, and then the SAT was for the coastline, and now kind of everything has equally accepted. Either or. So if you do really well on the ACT and not so great on the SAT, just send the ACT scores. You don't even need to send the SATs at all. They only want a standardized test. That's all they require. Yes? Yes. There is going to be an SAT prep course offered to prepare students for the March SAT. I don't know when that's starting. I think last time it was 6 weeks in length. I don't have the specific information, but I'm sure that'll come out after midterm exam time is over. Last year the cost was $25 per class, and that just paid for the book that you use. And that's going to be available after school. There's also, if anyone's ever heard of Khan Academy, it's a very large website that's all meant to tutor and share knowledge. Khan Academy is actually partnered with SAT. So if you go on Khan Academy and type in SAT prep, there's tons of SAT free prep on there. Kaplan, Princeton Review, they offer classes. They tend to be a little pricey and not very close to our area. So if your child is motivated to prep, they really can prep on their own. Most of the time there's explanations on how to get to correct answers. and things like that. The other standardized test that some colleges will require is a subject test, an SAT 2 or a subject test. This is a curriculum-based test. Typically, schools that require a subject test are more of the highly competitive schools. The Ivy Leagues, the little Ivies require the subject test. There are a few schools that have a subject test requirement that will use the ACT in lieu of the subject test because they're both curriculum-based. So you just have to look at what your school the school that you're applying to, what they require for admissions. The other factor that schools will look at is if you have been involved in any leadership positions or taken on any leadership roles at school. Pardon me. So this is going to involve your child typing up some sort of resume or list of activities that they've been involved in. That's not to say you have to be the captain of every sport team and the president of every club, but they want to see, as you've gone through your high school years, you taking on more responsibility and taking on leadership roles. And I always tell students it's quality over quantity. So it's not important that you're involved in 23 different clubs over the span of 4 years. What's important is you pick a few things that you're really interested in, that you have a passion for, you want to help people, you really like the theater and drama, so you're involved in all the plays. And as you kind of go through your years, you know, initially you start out as a member, then maybe you're a committee member, and then, you know, maybe your junior year you're secretary, and then senior year maybe you'll be president or something along those lines. So they just like to see growth and added responsibility, in addition to activities and part-time jobs and volunteer work and all those things. The next thing they're going to look at is the student's essay. Most of the senior high school English classes work on college essay in the beginning of the school year, of their senior year. I find that the essay is the biggest hurdle for students when they're seniors of getting completed. They don't know what to write about. They try to be really, really clever and smart and different, and then they wind up writing something that doesn't make a lot of sense. So this is really an area that you can help your students with, maybe brainstorm ideas and stuff like that. Edit for them for content. Yes? Yes. Typically there's a topic that's given. Sometimes the topic is very general. You can kind of reuse your essay for multiple colleges. About 500 colleges and universities use the Common Application. Is anybody familiar with the Common Application? So I know you are, Mrs. Greer. So the Common Application is just an application that's used by a lot of colleges. So it kind of makes the application process easier. Instead of filling out 10 different applications for 10 different schools, you fill out one application and you send it to the 10 different schools and you pay the 10 different application fees. So on the Common App, they have common essays, but if you fill out a school's application, for instance, I'm trying to think of a school that doesn't use the Common App. Fairleigh Dickinson. I don't even know if that's true or not, but they have their own essay topic, and so that, you know, sometimes it's what do you want to be, where do you see yourself in 5 years, why do you want to come to this school? It's very general, but the Common App actually gives you a choice of 5 different topics that you can write from. Some colleges require an interview. If there's a distance issue, a plane ticket is involved in getting to an interview, they will Skype interview you. I know, like, for instance, Lafayette College, they're a nice little small liberal arts college in Easton, right over the river from Phillipsburg. They require an interview with their students, and they're a small school, so they can do that. A school like Rutgers, they're not going to interview anybody. They're going to just look at your GPA and your SAT scores and make a decision based on that. So the smaller schools may require or encourage an interview. And a lot of times that's a great way for students to kind of make that personal connection with an admissions officer, and then, you know, maybe if you fall a little bit below what they're looking for GPA-wise or SAT score-wise, having that interview helps to kind of tip the scales in your favor, because you can talk about the things on your resume and the things that you're involved in and the things that you want to do when you grow up. The more competitive colleges, so colleges like TCNJ, the College of New Jersey, you know, the Ivy League schools, the bigger universities like Penn State, what they're going to be looking for is what makes you stand out as a student. You know, you're not all your grades and your test scores. I tell students that all the time. But they want to see students that are well-rounded, that have taken chances and have Leadership qualities. Character is always the number one non-academic quality that colleges will look for. And you may think that, well, they're not going to understand like my character and my personality because all they're doing is looking at paper. But if you are writing an essay, they're going to get a look into your personality. And if you speak to college admission counselors at the schools that you're going to, most times the colleges have specific counselors that are designated for Warren County or New Jersey. And if you get to know that counselor, whether it's face-to-face or through email, you can really develop a relationship with that person, and that's the first person that's going to read your application. So getting to know that person as best you can sometimes be very helpful. They want to make sure students took advantage of things that are offered to them in school, whether that's academics or different opportunities, and were you involved in athletics? So those are all the things that they're looking for. So this is just kind of a look at the different types of schools, the different levels of schools, and what they're looking for. So your most competitive schools are going to be looking for students that are graduating in the top 10% of their class, have a very high GPA of almost a 4.0 and a 3.75 or higher, SAT scores above 600. And these are schools that have a very low acceptance rate based on the number of applications that are being sent. I think I read somewhere that last year, I can't even remember, some crazy number, Princeton got, I don't know, 100,000 applications last year, and from that they offered admissions to like 4,000 people. Vanderbilt had a crazy, what was their crazy? 10%, yeah. It's a little, those highly competitive schools they're called competitive for a reason. Highly competitive schools, which kind of are that tier down below the most competitive, are looking for 35% to 20% ranked in the graduating class, a GPA of a B or higher, basically a 3.0, above average SAT scores, so over a 500, between 575 and higher, and they accept a larger portion of their applicant pool, so somewhere between 30 and 50%. So these are schools like Boston College, Drew, Middlebury, and Rutgers, Penn State, schools like that, TCNJ. Actually, TCNJ would be in the other category. Competitive schools, which are looking for students in the top 50% of their graduating class. GPAs of maybe a B minus, C plus to a B minus or higher. Pretty much national average for SAT scores, high 400s and higher, and are accepting a larger portion of their applicant pool. So College of St. Elizabeth, Montclair, Ramapo, state schools in Pennsylvania like Bloomsburg or Shippensburg. Lesser competitive schools are going to look at students who are ranked 65% in their class, their percentile rank, maybe even a little bit lower. They're looking for a grade of a C, basically over 400 on your SATs, and accepting a much larger application pool, 85% or higher. So Bloomfield College, Felician, Centenary College would be under that. Keystone College in Pennsylvania, Curry College in Massachusetts would kind of all fall under that lesser competitive category. Mitchell College in Connecticut. And then there's non-competitive schools. They take everybody. So as long as you have a high school diploma, you will get accepted to that school. Those are basically your community colleges, technical schools. Everybody's accepted. Usually there's some sort of placement test involved in those schools as well. So one thing that we do here at North Warren is we try to help students figure out their path. Not necessarily have it all figured out what they want to be when they grow up, but we try to put them on a path. Like, do you like science? Is history your thing? Do you like law? So we do that through our guidance lessons with Navient. So when students are sophomores, they take career interest inventory. You guys remember taking that last year? Who's a junior? You're a junior. Do you remember taking that last year? So it's a lot of questions based on the Hollins interest inventory, lots of questions regarding what they like, and then that translates those into careers. When they're juniors, they'll take an assessment or have the option to take an assessment called Do What You Are. That assesses their personality and matches their personality with careers. And then between myself and Mrs. Drum, we will talk to them about things that they like and what kind of careers fit those things, make college majors associated with those things, and try to put them on a path. Not everybody is going to have it figured out. Some kids have known they wanted to be a nurse since they were 10 years old. Some students I have a student this year, a senior, who comes into my office every week and sits down and says, I know what I want to do. I want to go in the Marines. Okay, great. Let's get you a recruiter. And comes in next week. I know what I want to do. I want to go to community college. Okay, great. I want to be an HVAC technician. Okay, great. Now he wants to be a forest ranger. So he just cracks me up. But he comes in every day, and he has so many things he likes. He doesn't know what that means as far as career. So we're working on trying to kind of help him narrow that, all of his likes out. I always tell students to relax. My own personal story with undergraduate, my schooling, I changed my major 5 times in college. I did graduate in 4 years, and I'm pretty successful. So it can be done. You are going to go to college. You're going to meet people. You're going to hear about things you never heard about, and you may kind of change your mind and change your path, and that's okay. A lot of times students really pressure themselves and create a lot of anxiety for themselves because they don't know what they want, but they think everybody else does, and they think they have to have it all figured out too. But I try to reassure them that they really don't have to have it all figured out right now. But we want a path. We want a direction. That's what our goal is. I've talked a lot about the college visit. Think of a college visit like a job interview. You don't want to go there looking all schleppy in your ripped jeans and hat backwards and stuff like that. You want to go and present yourself and look nice and look responsible and professional, because even though you're not being interviewed, you're going to meet some admissions people. It's all about networking and making connections, so you want to put your best foot forward. Introduce yourself to the admissions people, get some business cards, contact those people after the tour or whatever and say, hey, I really like the school, it was great meeting you, because they really do keep track of interactions with students, and they do keep track of who comes to visit them. I had a admissions person from Muhlenberg College, which is up in the Allentown area. A really good school, pretty competitive. It's a little smaller school. They had a student who applied there, and the admission person called me. He's like, they really want to come to our school. Are they really that interested in Muhlenberg? I'm like, well, I think they are, since they applied. And he said, well, they've never been to visit. And, it's 20 minutes away, or not 20 minutes, 40 minutes away, And they, sometimes admissions people will ask you questions. I don't really give too much information. I always say, yeah, it's your number one choice. That's always my token answer. But they look at those things when they're looking at, they don't always communicate that, but when they're looking at your application and they say, how many times did they come to visit? Oh, none? Oh, but they live in New Jersey and the school's in Florida. That's totally understandable. But when you're, within an hour drive, they're going to wonder, why didn't you come to visit? Once, maybe contact the admissions person once or twice, like through email. I mean, they're not going to expect you to be there every weekend, certainly not. But they do keep track of when you're there. Right. Then you go back. Right. A lot of times what happens is students will go visit schools in the spring of their junior year, maybe in the summer. They'll go, then they'll start to apply to all their schools, and they'll start to get acceptance letters, and then they'll go kind of back for a second look and try to figure out which school, these 5 schools that I was accepted to, which one is really where which one's home to me. So they go back and visit. That's when typically students do overnights, maybe in that second look around. Colleges aren't going to expect you to come visit them 3 times before you apply. I don't want to give that impression. But they do keep track. You want to make sure, like if you're a science major, you want to go ask the tour guide to can we see some of the laboratory facilities? If you're a theater major, you definitely want to go see the auditorium, the art facilities. So you can ask those questions. A lot of times too, if you go on a weekend or you go to the school at a time where there isn't an organized scheduled tour, they now give you like walking tours. So they give you directions and what to go and what you're looking at. You can't necessarily get into the buildings, but you can kind of go and do your own thing. That happens to students sometimes. They're trying to pack a lot of visits into, like one extended trip, and they're going to hit Maryland and Virginia and North Carolina all in a 5-day period. So if there's not an actual tour when you're going to be there, then they sometimes give you like a self-guided tour. Make sure you visit the dorms. A lot of times what happens on tours is they show you the nice junior dorm facilities, the suites. and they don't show you the freshman dorms. Some schools will not take you into a dorm. They say that it's like a privacy issue. A lot of times schools will have kind of like mock-up dorms and that are furnished by Bed Bath & Beyond or something like that. They have little signs up there. Stuff is donated. So you want to make sure you see that. What are the options for freshmen? Do they have suite style living? Do they have a basic dormitory with the bunk beds and the desks and the closets? Or do they have dormitories based on your major? Some students have what they call learning communities, and they kind of house students in that way. So there's all different ways that freshmen can be housed. Most schools guarantee freshman housing, but they don't always, so you always want to ask that question as well. I always, every kid has a smartphone now, so take pictures and take notes about what you liked from each school, because if you're visiting a lot of schools in a short period of time, sometimes they get a little confusing and they kind of overlap. Was that the school that had the really yucky food, or was that the school with the awesome dorms? I've done college tours myself. I did a Vermont college tour, and I went to 18 colleges in 7 days, and they blend together after a while. It's hard to keep them straight, especially when there's a lot of similarities. So you want to make sure that you're taking notes and keeping things. It'll help you later when you're making your decisions. Ask your tour guides questions. Sometimes, students have a tendency to be in the back of the pack of the tour guide. You can't always hear them all the way back there. They're walking backwards and they're talking like this. But, I always advise people to go to the front of the tour and ask the student questions. Why did you come here? What other schools did you apply to? What's your favorite thing about this school? What do you like least about this school? What's something that you would change? What's it like on the weekends? Those are all good questions to ask the students. Or maybe not your tour guide. You see some kids sitting on a bench and you're pretty bold. Just go over and sit and talk, to students on the bench. I've had parents that told me, yeah, I just went up and talked to kids. My kid was mortified, but I just wanted to ask them about, don't talk to them. And but that's how you really get to know what a school is. They're always the tour guides are like the creme de la creme of students. They're involved. They're the kids in high school that were involved in everything, and class presidents. Those are the kids who work in the admissions office and are tour guides. The kids that they put up on social media that tell their story, those are kids who are really involved in the school. So you want to talk to kids who are, just the average kids too, and see what their take is as well. Questions for the interview. If your school requires an interview or recommends an interview, if they're recommending it, you might as well just assume that it's required. So you want to ask some questions about the school. Most of this information can be found on the school's website, but you want to kind of have some questions in your pocket to be ready to ask questions, because they will say, do you have any questions for us? Okay, yes, I have these questions. So you want to kind of be prepared for that as well. If I had $1 for every time someone said, how many colleges should I apply to? It really depends on your major. So on average, I would say between 6 and 8 colleges. If you're applying to schools that fit this different criteria, so you have the REACH schools where the average GPA and SAT scores of the students that they accept are above what yours are, what you're bringing to the table. That's considered a REACH school. So 1 or 2, maybe 3 REACH schools. Target schools are when you have the GPA and SAT scores of what their average freshman brings to the table. So that's called a target school. You are very highly likely to be accepted to these schools. So 2 to 3 target schools. Safety schools, which that's a dangerous term nowadays in college admission process because it's so competitive, so maybe more a likely school where you're above what their average GPA and SAT scores are, 1 or 2. I always tell students that don't just apply to East Stroudsburg University because you know you're going to get in there. If you don't want to be that close to home and that's the only school you get accepted to, guess where you're going? And mom's going to bring you a pot roast every weekend and do your laundry. Well, do your laundry. That would probably be a nice touch. But you want to make sure that that safety school or that likely school is a school you can still see yourself being at and being happy at least for a year, because you can always transfer. So if your students have trouble figuring out which school is really the school they really, really want to go to, I always, hey, you can always transfer, right? It doesn't. If you don't like it, if you get there and you don't like it, you can transfer. I have had at least 5 requests this year already for students who graduated last year who are transferring. So You know, they love it for certain reasons. Maybe now it's too far away from home. Maybe it's really too big. Maybe it's too close. So there's lots of factors that can happen as far as why you would transfer. Preparing to apply. So you want to make sure you have at least one SAT taken before you end your junior year. You want to spend the summer doing research, visiting in the spring of your junior year in the summer, researching colleges. I encourage students when they start their senior year to have a working list of colleges they're applying to. Maybe not have it narrowed down to the specific 8 schools that they're applying to, but maybe have it down to like 15, and then maybe you go back and visit a school or two. College application fees can be pricey. I think they average around $50, $60 a school. So applying to 10 schools, that's expensive. I had a student last year who applied to, I don't know, like 27 schools. That's a lot. So I always say keep it in the single digits. The exception to that rule is if you're applying for a major that is highly, highly competitive, engineering, nursing, architecture, interior design, fine arts, anything where you may have to present some sort of portfolio or do an audition, you may need to increase your applications just because sometimes those programs are a little bit more selective. Physical therapy, there's a lot of programs where they have kind of like, they're called 3-2 programs or 4-2 programs where in the allied health field where you're going to be a physical therapist and you, when you're done, you have a master's degree. Or a physician's assistant and you have a master's degree at the end of those 4 or 5 or 6 years. Those programs tend to be very competitive, and then I would encourage you to apply to a lot because the numbers that they take are usually pretty low. But other than those kind of really highly competitive majors, you should stay in the single digits. So working on your resume as you're getting ready to apply. Every year I talk to students about, you know, make sure your resume is updated. I send emails out at the end of the year, update your resume. So you want to make sure that that's updated because it's very difficult when you're a senior applying to schools to think, what did I do? Did I do that community service? Was that freshman year, sophomore year? So if you keep a running tally, it's easier to manage. When students are seniors, I go through the whole application process with them. I won't really bore you with that now, but everything's done electronically through Naviance. We track everything that's requested. I track everything that's sent out. And make sure you have an appropriate email address. I had a student one year, her email was Bad Little Kitty. It's really inappropriate because, you know, you got to think about college as a professional place. You want to I say it every year. That child graduated in 2005, and I say it every year. That's the example. So, you know, if you have an email address that's like hotlacrossestar@aol.com, well, yeah, Hot Lacrosse Star, maybe you want to make that a little bit more professional with a name or something, you know. So I just caution people with that. Is it going to make or break if you get in or not? Probably not, but it certainly tells the admissions people something about you, and I always say, put your best foot forward. PSAT, hopefully most of your children took that this year if they're juniors or sophomores, and even if they're freshmen. We're given in October, the sophomore class was free for the sophomore class. Juniors, if you took the PSAT, if you score really well, you could be in the running for the National Merit Scholarship, potentially, if you scored well. The PSAT is practice SAT. The PSAT that the sophomores and the juniors took is for the current SAT we have right now that's kind of in the works. I don't know if anyone's heard this or not, but the SAT is changing for the students who are currently sophomores. So when their spring of their junior year, that January, there will be the new and improved SAT. And it's not going to be totally different than what they've seen now. Some of the biggest changes are going to be that there's no longer going to be penalty for wrong answers. So that's a huge change. Currently, students who take the SAT now, if they get it wrong, they are a quarter of a point is deducted from their score. So that's a huge difference. And the writing portion is going to be optional, although you still need to take it. You don't have to take it repeatedly if you're taking the SAT multiple times. But the PSAT is just good practice. You get a nice score report that kind of explains how you did on the questions. And especially for freshmen and sophomore, that's good information to have, and for the juniors as they prepare to take the actual SAT. With your SAT scores comes this option to be part of the website for College Board. It's called College Quick Start. You go in there and it's basically your SAT, and you can go in and check your wrong answers, do the problems again. There's tutorials to attack your weaknesses or where you didn't score that well on the PSAT. So it's a great tool to kind of prep for the actual SAT. And it's a 2-digit score, so the score is between 20 and 80, and you just add a 0, and that's kind of your SAT equivalent. So an average score on the PSAT is like a 49. That's about the average. Depending on what grade, I mean, if you're taking it as a freshman and you get a 48, that's pretty stellar. You know, if you're, and because that's the national average for a junior class. The SAT 1 test, or the SAT, is a 3-digit score between 200 and 800, 800 being a perfect score. There's 3 different sections: reading, mathematics, and writing. And these are the first column. Let's see if I have my laser pointer here. These are the national average, and this is the North Warren average. So with the exception of writing, we're above the national average. So that's nice. The best thing you can do to prep for the SAT, you can't cram the night before the SAT. You can't memorize vocabulary words and logarithms and things like that. It's just practice. Get familiar with how they ask questions. Get familiar with the way they ask questions based on, you know, the reading comprehension passages. Like I said before, on Khan Academy, there's free SAT prep. And there's also free SAT prep on College Board, and then we offer the class here, and there's lots of services that you can get some help with that. Also, doing well in your classes and doing your homework will help as well. The subject tests are curriculum-based tests in different subject areas. You can take up to 3 subject tests at one time, and these are the different areas you can take the tests in. So obviously, if you're going to be a science major, then you're probably going to want to take biology or chemistry, depending on which area of science you're interested in. If you're going to be an engineer, you probably want to take one of the math tests. So you want to choose at least one test that's in your area of interest or college major. Most schools that require a subject test are the Ivy Leagues and some highly, highly competitive schools. One thing you can do as a freshman or a sophomore, if you're taking like honors biology, a lot of times students who take honors biology at the end of the school year will take the biology subject test, especially if they're, you know they want to go, they have some high aspirations of some highly competitive schools. You don't have to do that. You can take 3 subject tests at one time. Each test is about an hour long, and you can take up to 3. Most time, if a school requires a subject test, they actually only require 2. So then you can take a 3rd test or not. Yes? Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. So you just have to look at what the requirements are. Sometimes they may specify based on your major, or sometimes they may say, please take a math and then another one of your choice. When I went to college, writing was a subject test that was always required. So you could take writing and one other test. But now the writing is part of the actual SAT, so now you get to choose which ones you want to take for the most part. The ACT. So the ACT is American College Test. It is also a curriculum-based test, much like the subject tests. There's 4 different sections in the ACT: English, mathematics, reading comprehension, and science reasoning. So the science reasoning sometimes throws students. So it's basically interpretation of data and graphs. On ACT.org, you can go and take some practice tests, and I always advise students to kind of just take a gander at it, especially the science section, before you take it. It's scored very differently than the SAT. The best score you can get, the best composite score, is a 36, and you can get a 36 in each subject area, and then you get an average or a composite score. I try really hard to encourage students to take both tests because you want to see which test you perform better on. The average ACT score, composite score, is a 20 or 21. Last year, of the senior class, 36 students took the test, and our average score was a composite score was a 23. So above average, that's good, above the national average. Military academies, if your child is interested in attending military, yes? Yeah, you can go on the ACT website and they have practice tests. They are not partnered with Khan Academy, and they probably never will be because now SAT is partnered with them, but they do have practice tests on the ACT website. Kaplan, I sent out an email about a month ago. Kaplan was offering a free ACT and SAT practice test. The only problem with that, great service, but they were offering it in Parsippany, and that's the closest one that was offered to our school. So I don't know if anyone signed up for that or not, but they offer that service, and then after they score your test, then they try to get you to take classes. You don't have to, but certainly going to try to get your business. Military academies have very special and specific and regimented application process that starts in your junior year. So if your child is interested in West Point, Naval Academy, Coast Guard Academy, or which one am I missing? The Merchant Marines, Air Force Academy. They should really go on those websites now, especially if you're a junior, and kind of start looking at that process. You can open your application portal in the spring of your junior year. When you're a senior, you need to get recommendations from our area senators. The exception to that is the Coast Guard Academy. They do not require nominations for their application process. Other options for students who are interested in military or being military officers are going into ROTC programs or applying for ROT scholarships. And again, they have very specific deadlines. They do sometimes help pay for school, and there's scholarship money associated with that. But if you don't get an ROTC scholarship, you can still be part of ROTC at this campus and then apply for scholarship the following year as a sophomore. And you can still work your way to officer commissioning through ROTC, even if as a freshman you don't get the scholarship money. College athletics. The NCAA runs the college athletics and the eligibility requirements for college athletics. So if you are interested in playing Division I or Division II sports, you have to be cleared through the NCAA clearinghouse. Basically, that means you need to send your transcript to them at the end of your junior year. And you need to have a certain GPA and SAT scores. So it's a sliding scale. It's different for Division I and Division II. But basically, the higher your GPA is, the lower your SAT score has to be. If you have a 4.0 GPA, you can get a 200, or not 200, a 400 on the SAT. That would be 200 math and 200 reading, which is basically putting your name on it. So the higher your GPA is, the lower your SAT scores have to be. And then as the GPA comes down, SAT scores have to come up. Division III, the reason for the eligibility in the clearinghouse for Division I and Division II is because there is scholarship money affiliated with Division I and Division II athletics. For Division III athletics, there is no specific athletic scholarship that a student can earn or receive to play a Division III athletics. They may, instead of getting an athletic scholarship, they may get an alumni scholarship, though, as a way to entice you onto a certain sports team, but they cannot call it an athletic scholarship. That will be changing in the future, but I don't think for anyone that is a current freshman that's not going to be changing. That's about 5 or 6 years down the road that you'll have to be cleared to play Division III athletics. Hearing from colleges. So this is about deadlines. So there are very specific deadlines involved in the college application process. I'm going to actually start with early decision. So early decision is an early deadline, typically in November, sometimes in December. Early decision means definite. If you apply to a school early decision, you're only allowed to apply to one early decision deadline school. If you are accepted to that school, you commit that it's a binding contract that you will go to that school if you are accepted. So that's what early decision is. You can only apply to one school early decision. If you also want to apply early to other schools, though, because your early decision school is maybe a REACH or it's an Ivy League, and you're like, I don't know if I'm going to get in or not, you can also then apply to other schools early, but they have to have an early action deadline. So the advantages of early action is early application deadline, early awareness if you're accepted, but there's no binding contract that says you have to go to that school. So you can apply to as many early action schools as you like, but and you'll know early on if you're accepted, but then you can kind of wait and see what the financial aid package is going to be before you decide if you want to go there or not. So with early decision, you're not going to necessarily know what your scholarship package is. Some schools have that ready for you when they accept you for early decision deadlines, but some schools don't. They wait for the FAFSA to be filed. There's a new application deadline called restrictive early action. It's very common amongst the Ivy League schools. They don't want to have a binding contract for you to go there, but they don't want you to apply early action to any of their competitors either. So, for instance, Yale has restricted early action. You can apply early action to Yale, but you can't apply to Stanford, MIT, or any of the other Ivy League schools. Early action, you can only apply regular decision. And I think they also exclude you from applying to any other private college early action. You can apply to public schools, though, early action if you want to. So those are very specific and they're very tricky, so you have to make sure you read the fine print for those. Regular decision has a deadline, January 1st, February 1st, April 1st. That's the deadline. You have to have all your pieces of your application in by then. And then there's rolling admission, which is very common. And as they accept applications and as your application file is complete, once it's complete, they review you. And then they'll decide if you're accepted or not. So with rolling admissions, a lot of times it's advertised as the deadline is March or April or something like that. But with rolling admission, don't let that deceive you. You still want to get your application in early. The benefits of applying early decision and early action, you're really telling a school, I really, really want to come to your school. I got everything together really early in my senior year, and I'm meeting this really early deadline. With early decision, typically about 50% of the freshman class for that school comes from that early decision pool. So if you're a student who maybe is falling a little bit below the GPA and SAT score of that school, applying early decision or early action may help tip scales in your admission favor. It may. Or you may get waitlisted to the regular decision deadline. But if you can get your stuff together early, it's always a benefit to apply as early as possible. Financial aid. Every year we have a financial aid night. We have a financial aid administrator from one of the local colleges that comes in and does a whole evening on how to fill out the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. And that cannot be filed until January 1st of a student's senior year. So you have time before you need to really worry about the FAFSA, but another financial aid application that some private schools require is called the CSS Profile, and that is through the College Board. Strangely enough, there's a fee involved in filing that application, but it can sometimes help you get more financial aid than what the government deems you're qualified for, and that's typically required for private schools. And there's usually a deadline for the CSS profile, and so you need to make sure that you're aware of what that deadline is when you apply. Then there's scholarships. We have a very strong local scholarship program that's presented to seniors when they're in January of their senior year, but we have scholarships that we list on Naviance and send emails out to seniors whenever we update that. There's lots of search engines. FastWeb is really common and popular, and scholarships.com and just Google searches. You know, a lot of times students wait till they're seniors to start the scholarship process, but you can really start that now. There are scholarships out there for freshmen and sophomore and juniors. A lot of times they're kind of contest based, or it's like an essay contest, create a greeting card, but there's a lot of money out there. And if you start early, maybe it won't be as stressful your senior year. So you can always look now. And with FastWeb, what you do with FastWeb is you create an account, and the same thing with scholarships.com and Sally Mae. You create an account so you can put in that you're a junior, what your GPA is, what you're interested in, what sports you play, and things like that. And it'll start matching scholarships that meet your criteria. So you'll only get scholarships that juniors can apply to or sophomores can apply to. So it's always good to start looking. Three most important actions you can do before choosing a school is visit, visit, visit. I cannot tell you how many times I have had students in my office that say they're going to a school. Oh, yeah, what'd you think of it when you went there? Oh, I never went to visit, but my cousin went there and he really liked it, so, I'm just going to go there. Inevitably, that child transfers. But you should, if you can, go visit. You can't always visit schools in Alaska and Hawaii, and although I'll go with you to Hawaii if you're going to visit a Hawaii school. But visit as much as you can and get out there and get an idea of what colleges and types of campuses you like. We also have, we have the college fairs every year. I have multiple posters outside my office about open houses and things like that. Lastly, what can parents do? Lots of times students will just say, I don't want to talk about college and don't talk to me about this, and sometimes there's a lot of anxiety. The most important thing you can do is listen, encourage, help, but don't fill out the applications for them, don't write the essays for them. Discuss really what they want out of a college experience, what they want out of a college campus, their major. It's not necessarily always about the school that's most competitive or, the most impressive bumper sticker on a car. Sometimes students who go to schools that maybe they fall a little bit below what the average GPA and SAT score are of they get accepted to a safety school, especially if it's a private school. There's a lot of scholarship money that can be bestowed upon them because they are exceeding, they're going to be one of the top students in their school. So they're going to encourage that student to come there by giving them a lot of scholarship money. And speaking of scholarship money and finances and things like that, be very honest with your children about what you can afford and what you can't afford. College is ridiculously expensive, and a lot of students graduate with like a mortgage, basically with student loans. I've had students who've gone away to school, to very expensive schools, and, they say, it's not worth the money. They don't realize it until they get there, but then they say, I'm going to come home and I'm going to, so be very honest with them about money. Talk to them about student loans and what that means when you have to start paying that money back. Sometimes high school students don't realize. They think they're going to graduate and get a job right away and make $70,000 a year. And meet with me. If anyone ever talks to Mrs. Johnstone, she always encourages people to come meet with me. Meet with me, meet with Mrs. Drum. Mrs. Drum will encourage you to come meet with her in the spring to talk about these things. I'm always willing and able to meet with students, juniors, sophomores, freshmen with questions, parents. I'm happy to meet. I love talking to parents. I wish I talked to more parents, but sometimes I don't talk to parents until, January of senior year, and they're like, I never came to talk to you, and I don't know what to do with my kid. And so, come talk to me. I'm pretty nice. I talk a lot. I have a lot of things to say, if you haven't noticed that already. Does anyone have any questions about anything? Yes, Ms. Pergola. Okay. Yes, the Blair Academy has college fairs in the spring. There's 2 evening college fairs. And we are always made aware of that in advance, and we advertise that to our students. I think it's usually in April. It's not as large as our college fairs that happen during the school day. I mean, we have like 80, 90 colleges that come here. It's a little bit smaller each evening, but it is an opportunity for you to go meet admissions people, especially from some colleges that maybe aren't at our fair. Colleges from California, Pitzer and Caltech and Stanford, some colleges that are, the tendency for the Blair Academy is that they're more highly competitive colleges that kind of go there because it's Blair Academy, but it's an opportunity to talk to some admissions people. Yes? I think that, I'm going to say I think all of them, maybe but one do now. MIT doesn't use the Common App, but I think majority of the other ones do. I mean, I don't know off the top of my head, but I'd say if not all of them, then all but one, all but two. I don't remember if it was Harvard or Yale, but one of them wasn't, and now this year they are, or last year they were, so most of them are. Any other questions? Yes? Yes. They get about 35 minutes, I think is about what they get. We give them a list of all the schools that are going to be in attendance. We also give them a list of questions to talk to, to ask the admissions people, because sometimes kids, they don't know what to say. They kind of walk around and pick up pens and things like that. But they have about 30 minutes. This year the juniors went first and then the sophomores went. But if juniors wanted to stay and stick around, I think sometimes, we let some of them stick around if they wanted to. And then they have the opportunity to talk to them again next year as well. I mean, if you can't hit every table in 30 minutes, but hopefully you looked at the list beforehand and you kind of thought about who you wanted to go and talk to. Anyone else have any questions? I'm going to attempt to put this PowerPoint with my vocal recordings on the website, on the North Warren website or YouTube or something. So, if you feel like you missed anything or I talked too fast, it'll be on there. And certainly, please feel free to call me. I'm at extension 1138, and my email address is tquinn@northwarren.org, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Yes. Yep.
Have like deadlines of what to
yeah. I mean, Naviance. I should have pulled that up. But Naviance, basically, if you look at a college page on Naviance, they have all the colleges listed. You can do college searches based on geographic location, majors, athletics, things like that, and it'll spew out a list for you. You can look at the average GPA and SAT scores, and they do have the application deadlines on there. I encourage you to make sure that they're accurate with the school. It's supposed to be updated every summer, but if colleges don't get that information to them, then it could be last year's date. So always best to double check the website as well for application deadlines. The average GPA and SAT scores are usually pretty similar year to year, so if it's last year's information, that's not going to be a huge deal. We also we track the students who have graduated from here too, so you can compare yourself to other North Warren students who've been accepted to that school and where you fall GPA and SAT wise, as well as nationally what the average freshman has when they are accepted to that school. So it's good information. Yes. Mm-hmm.
What their each school could be.
Mm-hmm. We talk about that. The way I start, when they're juniors, they take a little survey, so I can kind of get an idea of what their possible major may be, what things they're interested in, and I take that, because especially this year, I didn't know, I have the senior class, they're my caseload now, but I didn't really know them very well coming into the senior year, so I had them fill out these little surveys. So when I talked to them when they were juniors, I kind of referred to them a little bit. Students who said, well, I really don't know what I want to do, I would go to Naviance and look at the assessments that they did. I always ask them what their SATs are and their GPA, and we talk about what their major is or what they want to study in college, and then I kind of go to this book. It's called Rugg's Recommendations, and it ranks different majors and the best schools for those majors. So that's kind of where I start, and looking at their SAT scores and their GPA, I say, okay, here's some reach schools that you want to look at based on what you're looking for in a school. Here's some target schools. Here's some safety schools, and kind of start there. I like to give students maybe like 20 or 30 schools to look at as their initial, and then we can always take some out, add some more in. You can do that on Naviance too, do searches that way, and then save everything electronically. College Board lets you do searches like that too. But I really like Rugg's because it rates the majors and the programs, because you always want to go to the school that has the best biology program, of course. And yes?
Cost is not a factor. Pros and cons of going to a 2-year school and transferring to a 4-year school after that. Consider that for people.
I wouldn't say the only reason to start out at a 2-year community college is cost. I mean, that's certainly a big plus. Students who may not be mature enough to be away from mom and dad and away at school and totally responsible for managing all their time and making wise choices, it might be wiser for that student to stay a little closer to mom and dad for a year or two. Also, maybe students who, I like to refer to them as late bloomers, who maybe didn't realize until a little later in their high school career that academics were important, or didn't realize how important academics were and didn't put a lot of effort into their Academics, those students may be wiser to keep them a little bit closer to home to keep an eye on them. But I mean, financially is really the biggest factor, I think, and that too, I think, is helpful for students who aren't really sure. In addition to the money thing, you know, do you really want to send a student to a $65,000 a year school when they have absolutely no idea what they want to do and they weren't the best student in high school? And, you know, I don't know if I would want to do that if that was my child because I don't have that much money. But you know, I think there's a lot of factors in deciding which is the right fit. I always encourage students to go, you know, we have 3 community colleges that service our area: CCM, County College of Morris, Sussex County, and Warren County. Funny enough, we send the most students to CCM every year. Last year, I think 27 students from the graduating class went to CCM because it's bigger, there's more choices. There are, you know, distance-wise, driving-wise, it's for a lot of people, it's the same time distance to drive to either school. If Warren County is our county community college, and that will be the lowest tuition. If you go to Sussex or CCM, you have to pay out-of-county costs, unless Warren County doesn't have the major you want. So for CCM, like they have mechanical engineering. So if you want to be an engineer, you know, or they have a theater program and studio arts, and so you would go there instead. Sussex has human services, which is a track for students who want a degree in social work. Warren County doesn't have that. But Warren County has early childhood and graphic design and biology. So if that's what you want to major in and you go to Sussex because it's 6 miles from your house, or you want to go to CCM because you want to play on the soccer team there, then you're going to have to pay the out-of-county tuition, which is, I think, roughly double. So instead of $3,500, you're going to pay close to $7,000. Which still is economical, but yes. They do. There are scholarships there, but from the schools themselves, the community colleges, not that much. There are definitely scholarships available for students. For private two-year schools, there's a lot of schools out there that have associate's degrees and bachelor degrees. Mitchell College is a good example of that. That's up in the shoreline of Connecticut. They offer both degrees, so whether you're seeking an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree, you're looked at the same. You're a freshman student. So in that case, you know, if it's a private two-year school, there's going to be a little bit more scholarship money available, particularly if you have good grades. A lot of the scholarship is merit-based, but they do have need-based scholarships as well. But definitely more at four-year universities. But outside, right. And then, you know, also too, when you're applying to scholarships that are regional or state or national, they don't necessarily, I mean, some do dictate you have to be seeking a bachelor's degree, but most of them just say you have to be a full-time student seeking a degree. So whether you're seeking an associate's or a bachelor's degree, an outside scholarship that's separate from a college, typically that doesn't really matter. Mm-hmm. Right, there are, though, a lot of schools do have special scholarships specifically for transfer students. So if you're going from a community to, you know, East Stroudsburg, I know, has specific scholarships for transfer students, and a lot of the other colleges do too. So a lot of times just applying to a school puts you in the running for the merit and the financial, the need-based scholarship, but you always want to check every school too, because sometimes there's separate applications for special scholarships. A perfect example of that is Fairleigh Dickinson University. They have the Presidential Scholarship, which is for students who have very high grades, and you could potentially earn 4 years of free tuition if you receive that Presidential Scholarship. It's a whole separate application than the school application. You also have to be nominated by your school to fill, you know, for that scholarship. There's no limit on the number of students I can nominate, but I just have to fill out a form. So there are some scholarships for freshmen that are separate from the actual application. Yes? No question? Just stretching your rotator cuff? Okay. Anyone else? Well, I thank you all so much for coming. Please tell your friends and your parents that this presentation will be posted electronically eventually. I encourage you to come talk to me, talk to Mrs. Drum in the spring. If you're a junior, it's very important to pick, classes as a senior. Choose wisely and explore different areas. Challenge yourself as a senior. There's less requirements as a senior that you have to take, so challenge yourself if you can. Thank you so much.
Isn't it true that some schools specialize more, I don't want to say specialize, but like under their majors, like assist more? I kind of